What's up everyone, I'm Twisted. If you've been following the lore we got so far in 2025, you already know that the Darkin Glaive is slowly being teased as being a huge plot point in the narrative of this year. And you might also remember that Atakhan was the one that told LeBlanc about the location of this Darkin weapon. But how and why does Atakhan know about this? Besides its current location, where else does the demon know about the Darkin? Well, the other day I was browsing to the lore subreddit and I saw a post made by someone talking about the Darkin Glaive. In it, this person mentions how the Darkin appears to be involved in the death of Sahn-Uzal. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? I've been closely following the lore we got so far this year and I don't remember this being hinted at all. And then it hit me. New connections formed in my brain that tied together the new lore and previous theories I've had about it. These made sense. The Darkin being tied to Sahn-Uzal's death made so much sense. And so that's the topic of today's video. We'll be going over everything we know about the Darkin Glaive, as well as my theories and predictions about its connections to Sahn-Uzal, Atakhan and Yunara, and also how Shen's story ties into all of this. You probably already know what the Darkin is. Traumatized god warriors who lost their purpose after the fall of Shurima, waged war against each other across the world before finally being either killed or sealed in their weapons. This Darkin in specific was first teased in the cinematic Welcome to Noxus. This established that LeBlanc was interested in it, but we only learned that it was a Darkin weapon with the release of her updated voice lines and the Demon's Hand game, and it was also only through a social media post that we learned that the weapon is a glaive. Now let's speedrun through everything we learned about this Darkin in specific, as well as other relevant information. For example, Sahn-Uzal really valued one-on-one fights. Yes, this is important. Atakhan was merged with Katash Li, and together they were bound to Sahn-Uzal's will. When Sahn-Uzal died, the demon was temporarily free. Following this death, the demon was devastated and absconded to the spirit realm for some reason. The demon says it went there because it hungered. Again, we don't actually know why, but LeBlanc seems very curious about it as well. The Demon's Hand game explores the legend behind Sahn-Uzal's death. LeBlanc, disguised as one of his soldiers, taunts Atakhan with not so glorious stories about its master's death. The demon, however, refutes all of them. Atakhan seems to be the only one who knows the truth. Its version of the story depicts Sahn-Uzal in battle, meeting his foe face to face. The great grass ocean set aflame, a man at its center, sword held high as he breathed his last. Though LeBlanc calls this version of the story a fantasy. Still, the fire part is likely what we see in this panel from Atakhan's comic, so there might be some truth to this version of the story. But regardless, the important takeaway here is that Sahn-Uzal's death is left ambiguous and Atakhan is hesitant to share how it happened. Sahn-Uzal was brought back as Mordekaiser by a coven of sorcerers. LeBlanc says the world was destitute, and these sorcerers sought a savior, but also someone they could bend to their will. The world being destitute likely refers to the aftermath of the Darkin War. Centuries after his death, Mordekaiser summoned Atakhan, and we know this happened right after he came back to the physical realm. He came back in the year -400, so Sahn-Uzal's death must have happened in -600 or prior, which means he died before the Darkin War was in full force. Since he has quotes hinting that he knew about Shurima's fall and its god warriors, he likely died sometime between these two events. After Mordekaiser's defeat, Atakhan was imprisoned by the Black Rose, and centuries later, LeBlanc summons the demon once again because it somehow knows the location of the Darkin weapon. And as we mentioned before, LeBlanc is interested in this weapon. In the last cinematic of the Noxian season, we learned that the weapon isn't in Ionia. Instead, it's in a location that can be accessed through the region. Ionia is just a doorway, and Atakhan says the weapon is in its realm, which means the weapon is likely in the spirit realm. Atakhan also mentions a weak tether, likely referring to a place that connects both the spirit and physical realms. We transition to the Spirit Blossom season with a cinematic here tomorrow, and we do know that this season is continuing the lore of the Noxian season. As I explained in my video about the cinematic, the scenes featuring Yunara likely take place in the spirit realm, and this location right here is likely some kind of bridge or gateway between both realms, perhaps tied to the weak tether that Atakhan mentioned. Since the stairs leading nowhere are seen in both realms, it's possible that these pieces of land were transported from the physical to the spirit realm, leaving a hole in this mountain. Yunara is known as the Shrine Maiden. Her legend says she followed her patron spirit into exile during the War of the False Kenmei. As I explained in my previous video, False Kenmei is likely an Ionian name for the Darkin, and so the War of the False Kenmei is actually the Great Darkin War. This in turn could mean that Yunara served a Darkin, and when they were imprisoned in their weapon and hidden in the spirit realm, she followed them somehow. If you are enjoying this video so far, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your your mind later. A Darkin in Ionia isn't a new concept, and a Darkin being hidden in the Spirit Realm is also not new, and just like Varus was hidden and protected in a temple in Pallas, and Zolani was worshipped in a shrine in Barl, it seems like the new Darkin was at some point in an Ionian shrine as well, and when the Darkin was sealed in its weapon, this shrine was transported to the Spirit Realm. But okay, how does Atakhan know this? How does Atakhan know that the weapon was hidden in the Spirit Realm? Well, I think it goes back to the death of Sahn-Uzal and the fact that Atakhan seems to be the only one who knows the truth. You already know where I'm going with this. What if, sometime after the fall of Shurima, the Darkin moved to Valoran and attacked Sahn-Uzal and his army? As I mentioned in terms of timeline, this could make sense. Sahn-Uzal likely wanted to fight the Darkin alone in a 1v1, which might have led to his death. Going back to his voice lines, he doesn't have many interactions with other champions or factions. Kindred, LeBlanc and Noxians make sense, we'll get to Targonians later, but why are Shurimans here? And not Freljordians, for example, since we know his army fought them. Perhaps we are missing something here that connects Sahn-Uzal to the Shurimans, and I think a Darkin attacking him might just be it. I should mention that it's possible that it wasn't the Darkin itself who fought Sahn-Uzal. It could have been someone else wielding the Darkin. As LeBlanc asks Atakhan who or what dealt the final blow, the what possibly referring to the Darkin already sealed in their weapon. And so this could mean that Yunara's patron wasn't actually a Darkin, but it's too soon to know for sure. Since the Darkin is sealed somewhere in the Spirit Realm, this could explain why Atakhan went there after Sahn-Uzal died. He might have went there looking for the weapon. Previously, I thought Atakhan might have gone looking for Sahn-Uzal's spirit, but honestly, both are possible. In the Demon's Hand game, LeBlanc is curious about why Atakhan went there, so I think this is important. Now, why does LeBlanc want the weapon? Well, perhaps if the weapon killed Sahn-Uzal, it might be the key to defeating Mordekaiser for good somehow? Perhaps there's a connection between it and Sahn-Uzal's spirit, though I'm not entirely sure. We are still missing pieces of this puzzle. Let me know down below why you think the weapon is important to LeBlanc. Also, if the Darkin did indeed play a part in Sahn-Uzal's death, then there's still a piece missing here explaining how and why the Darkin went from Valoran to Ionian. Now, a Darkin needs a host, and we know that Vladimir and LeBlanc lost the person they planned to use for this. Side note, I think this was Rel, and the dialogue about them losing the host is teasing that Rel escaped the Black Rose after the events of the Mbessa novel, setting things up for a potential Noxian show where she meets Mel, but hey, that's literally the topic of another one of my videos. For now, I'm really curious to know who or what will wield this new Darkin weapon. I don't think it will be Yunara, as her primary weapon seems to be these spheres, and a lot of people believe it will be Shen, but I don't think this will happen. Regardless, if we get the Darkin itself in full control or someone else wielding it, they will most likely be the third and last champion of this year. The Darkin Glaive was first teased in the first cinematic of 2025, so it's only fitting that the year will end with them coming to the game. Therefore, to me, it makes more sense for the host to be separate from a champion already in the game. Now, this doesn't mean that LeBlanc isn't planning on Shen becoming the new host. She says they won't need Noxus to get the Darkin Glaive, and one of her clones spied on Shen, seeing him picking up a seed in the royal gardens of Demacia and placing it in his pocket. Later, Shen would return to Ionia with a Spirit Blossom tree that grew in those gardens, this being one of the reasons for him to return. It's very possible that this tree came from the seed he picked up and that it was all part of LeBlanc's plan. With this being said, I don't think her plan will work and Shen will not wield the weapon. Hashtag girl failure. Still, I believe Shen will likely play a role in opening the gateway between both realms, as it's hinted in both the cinematic and promo art that he and Yunara will cross paths at some point. As I explained in my previous video, Shen is trying to find out where he belongs, and I think the answer might just be with the people he loves. In a similar way, Yunara chose to follow her patron to another realm, perhaps also choosing to stay with someone she loves. Yunara was confirmed to have some kind of connection to the Spirit Blossom flowers, so perhaps Shen planting the tree in Ionian soil will somehow lead to him meeting her. As I said, we are still missing a lot of pieces to this puzzle. I didn't even mention the Kinku, who will likely also play a role in the narrative. There's also the Sindred teaser from LeBlanc's story, which could tie into all of this somehow. But finally, where will the next season take us? We did get some voice lines from Sahn-Uzal and LeBlanc hinting at some history between the Noxii and the Rakor. The Noxii were Shen, for they were not people of the sun, nor the moon. They were people of the darkness. Targon did play a major role in the Darkin War, as the host of the aspect of Twilight was the one who kickstarted the fall of the Darkin, giving mortals a way to kill them or seal them. So I wouldn't be surprised if the last season of 2025 takes us across the world to Mount Targon. That would be really cool. Though Shurima is also possible. But again, we just don't have enough pieces to speculate this far. So for now, let's just wait and see where all this narrative leads. Let me know what are you most curious about when it comes to the narrative of this year. Personally, I can't wait to learn more about the Darkin and how they tie into the story. And again, shout out to this user for their post which inspired me to make this video. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. It's free and you can always change your mind later. I'm trying to reach 5k subs this year, so your help would be very much appreciated. I'm Twisted and I'll see you guys in the next video.